You know, we're surrounded by engineering marvels every single day. Highways, bridges, massive flood control systems. But have you ever stopped to think about the invisible force that actually makes them happen? Or sometimes makes them not happen? We're talking about management. And no, not office memos or corporate culture. We are talking about the fundamental blueprints for how we organize people to build our world. And what happens when those blueprints are flawed and the builders are corrupt? Well, that leads to a question with some pretty serious life-or-death consequences.
It's a heavy question for sure, but it is right at the heart of what we're digging into today. Just imagine a multi-million-dollar flood control system. It's designed, it's funded, all to protect a community from a disaster. So how could that very project end up becoming a threat?
And there it is. That's the devastating answer. The money gets spent, the reports all get filed, but on the ground, right where that flood barrier should be, there's nothing. This is the reality of what are called ghost projects, and it's where our whole story really begins.
So to really understand this kind of failure, we have to crack open the machine of management itself. How does a system that's designed for construction end up producing, well, phantoms?
A ghost project isn't just a simple delay. As you can see, it's a complete and total breakdown of accountability. Now, as some engineering studies in the Philippines have highlighted, these things often pop up in crucial infrastructure, like flood control programs. And that's where the gap between what's promised on paper and what actually exists can have the most tragic consequences.
So, how do we prevent these ghost projects? We've got to go right back to the very beginning, the plan. I want you to think of management theories as the architectural blueprints for society. I mean, from the ancient rice terraces all the way to modern highways, these invisible plans dictate how we organize ourselves to get massive things done.
And these blueprints, they have evolved so dramatically over time. We started with just pure communal cooperation for these huge projects like the Banaue Rice Terraces. But as societies got bigger, the Industrial Revolution demanded rigid, hierarchical structures. Then, the 20th century became totally obsessed with efficiency and data. And now, today, the big focus is on adapting to a changing world. Each step was a reaction to the challenges of the time.
Okay, let's look at the first modern blueprint, classical theory. It's all about a clear chain of command, kind of like you'd see in the military or a big government agency. The goal? Efficiency. But, and this is a big but, there's a critical ethical risk here. When following the rules becomes more important than questioning the outcome, a rigid hierarchy can become the perfect hiding place for corruption. As long as the paperwork looks good, a ghost project can slip right through the system.
So back in the early 20th century, this whole quest for efficiency kind of split into two camps. You had scientific management, championed by Frederick Taylor, which was obsessed with the task itself, finding the one best way to do absolutely everything. But at the same time, Henri Fayol's administrative theory was focused on the manager. Fayol said a manager's job has 5 key functions, and the most crucial one for our story is that last one, controlling. That means ensuring quality and accountability. When that control function breaks down, that's when you get shoddy materials, or worse, no project at all.
All right, let's jump ahead to a more modern blueprint. Environmental theory. This one sees an organization not as some closed-off machine, but as a living system that has to interact with its environment. So for a flood control project, that means thinking about climate change, actually talking to the community, and making sure the project is sustainable. The ethical trap here is just pure ignorance. Ignoring these factors doesn't just make a project bad, it actively destroys public trust.
Okay, so we have our blueprints, the theories. But a blueprint is useless without a builder, right? Someone to interpret it and actually bring it to life. This is where leadership styles come in. Who is in the driver's seat and, just as importantly, how do they choose to drive? Let's start with 2 opposite approaches. First, the autocratic leader. They make every single call. This can be incredibly fast, which is great in a crisis, but it comes with a massive risk. With no checks and balances, corruption can just run wild. On the flip side, you've got the democratic leader, who consults with the team and the community. This builds trust and leads to more sustainable projects, like those seen under Jesse Robretto's participatory governance style, but yeah, it can be a lot slower.
And of course, there are other styles. The laissez-faire leader is totally hands-off. This can work great with a highly skilled, motivated team, but it risks a complete loss of accountability if contractors are just left to their own devices. Then there's the servant leader who puts the public's needs above absolutely everything else. And finally, you've got the nice guy, the leader who avoids conflict at all costs, which is a really dangerous style when you're the one who needs to blow the whistle on bad materials or shady contracts.
But here's where it all comes together. This is the light bulb moment. We need to understand what happens when you combine a specific blueprint with a specific builder. Because that combination of a management theory and a leadership style, it creates predictable and sometimes disastrous outcomes.
Just take a look at this table. It really lays it all out. See that top row? An autocratic leader using a rigid, classical blueprint. Yeah, the project might get done fast, but the ethical risk of ghost projects is just sky high. It's the perfect storm for corruption. Now contrast that with a democratic or servant leader using a modern, environmental blueprint. Sure, progress might be slower, but the outcome is sustainable and it builds public trust. You can even see how a hands-off laissez-faire leader focused on pure efficiency might lead to innovation, but with zero oversight. Each combo creates its own set of trade-offs.
So, the crucial point is this. The problem isn't just a bad leader or an outdated theory. It's the combination. A rigid system that values paperwork more than reality, led by someone with unchecked power, that is a recipe for failure. It's an environment where ghosts aren't just possible, they're probable.
And this brings us to the person who has to navigate all of this, the engineer on the ground. When you're dealing with these blueprints and these builders, what is your role in actually building our world? Well, it all boils down to an ethical choice.
At the end of the day, an engineer's role goes way beyond just concrete and steel. As one of our sources puts it, they have to be guardians of public trust. And that public trust, that's the foundation that everything else is built on. So what does being a guardian look like in practice? It means following a code. It starts with putting public safety above everything else, no exceptions. It requires upholding absolute integrity, especially when it's hard. It means demanding accountability from the very top of the hierarchy all the way to the bottom. And it means consciously choosing a way of building that serves the community first. So the next time you see a construction site for a new road, or a bridge, or a flood barrier in your town, I want you to ask yourself this question. Is that project just about laying down concrete? Or is it about laying down a foundation of trust between the people who build and the community they're supposed to serve? Because ultimately, that's the only structure that truly lasts.